you're putting together a puzzle, but you also have to like make that puzzle yourself and like cut up the pieces and then scramble them up and put them back together. It's like trying to like grab a fistful of sand under the ocean, right? Like eventually like the water and the waves will wash every last bit of that sand. You want to pick up and kind of give it your all.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of the KDigitals podcast, where we dive into artists, their origin, their process, and their style. Joining me today is Hon Hoang. How are you doing today, man?
Pretty good. How are you, Chris?
Doing well. I'm happy that it's Friday, right? And they get to go right into the weekend, which is still more work, but you know, it's still Friday for me.
Yeah, the work never really ends, does it?
Right. I mean, that's a good thing though. Like that's what I've learned is like, if you are someone that stays busy, then life is just every day is a weekday kind of thing, right? Which is one way to live, but it's also kind of fun.
Yeah, it's always trying to progress towards something, so it's a nice feeling.
For sure. Well, cool, man. Let's dive right into it. So every podcast, I always like to kick off by having the artist define themselves. You know, my go-to for you is say you're a director or you're a filmmaker, but I know there's different things, but those are also very limiting things. So, like, how would you define yourself as an artist?
If we're using more broad descriptions, I think I'm a person who likes to try and like capture little moments of beauty that are often overlooked. So I'm a filmmaker and photographer, but in those things I try and like capture a lot of truths in our reality, but then also when it comes to my filmmaking, I build upon that. And I guess the best way to put it simply is I like to build lies and fantasies off of realities, if that makes sense.
Okay. So when did you get started like building lies and fantasies? When was that like, oh, I want to start doing stuff like this, you know?
I think I've always liked doing stuff like this. I grew up watching a lot of film and television, but I think shortly after graduating in 2014, I had a little bit more time on my hands in terms of my free time in order to learn new things. So I decided to just start picking up photography with the goal of eventually going into filmmaking.
For sure. What so I just saw on like your website, like you like traveled to like Korea and did like the whole photo series there, right? And then you also have like the films you've been doing, right? That seems like a lot of work, right? So what made you? Most people just pick up a camera and they just walk around their neighborhood, but you like really took it and ran with it, right? What led you to do all that?
I wouldn't really know exactly how to answer that exactly. It's just like when you, personally for me, when I pick up something, there's definitely, for lack of a better word, burning inside of you that you want to pick up and kind of give it your all, right? Okay. When I do something and I know that I want to give it a go, I don't want to say like I didn't try and give it my all. So there was obviously a lot of planning involved, a lot of coordination, a lot of strategy, just really sitting down and collecting myself and thinking what I want from it and how I want to achieve it. And that's how you see me, doing things like living in Korea for a little bit, traveling to places like Hong Kong or Japan, and just like really trying to explore what photography can do for you and where it might take you.
For sure. Can I ask you about your films and like dive into those? Yeah,
for sure.
For sure. So you put out 4 films. You have Fall With Me, Echoes of Departure, Taciturn Tango, Disintegration. So by watching them, I noticed like they're very like small cast. Like they're very like, I think you say too, they're very like relationship based films, right? Where it's like, and it's usually different aspects, right? Like someone maybe like with their family or with the couple or other folks. Why that recurring theme with all your creations?
Oh, which recurring theme do you mean?
Yeah, in terms of like making them very like relationship based, like one-on-one relationships with the characters in the films.
Uh, I think most movies are about relationships and people, right? Like it's about how you interact with others or the world. So more or less, it's always about relationships. It's yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question. Sorry, it's just yeah. Most things are always about relationships, right? So it's not like it was my intention to make every film themed around relationships. It's just a commonality that we all have, whether we have a relationship with like people personally or a relationship and how we interact with society.
For sure. And then so with like Taciturn Tango, right? You kind of have, I'm assuming this person went through like a breakup, but then they go from crying on the train and then running into like someone else and like, I'm going to date you and I'm going to do all this stuff and I'm going to make you sad. It's like, whoa, so intense, right? What was the inspiration behind that film?
The inspiration for that was just my own experiences in life, right? So as I said earlier, you take little bits of truth from your life and then you fabricate and you build upon that. So like everything I tend to write and create, I try and give like at least 10% of my reality in there. So then you build upon that. So then like a story becomes more believable. You don't just like write something that's completely so outlandish that it's not grounded in some sense of reality, that it's hard for the audience to believe what you're trying to sell them, right? So in that, I think I was going through my own relationship issues and realized a pattern of like when you date someone, you get to know, you get to know them, you get to know their friends, their family, but eventually after you break up, you try and make it a go, try and be friends and whatnot. But obviously, as much as you want to try and hold all that stuff together, it's like trying to like grab a fistful of sand under the ocean, right? Like eventually, like the water and the waves will wash every last bit of that sand out of your hands, as much as you try to hold on to it.
That's a cool metaphor. That's heavy. That's interesting. That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
And then so you have like a film like that, and then you go to like Echoes of Departure, which to me is like very like more like inspirational and like driven, right? And so like you have these cool like contrasting like films, right? How'd you go from like those leaps?
So just different moments in your life, and it's also as a creative, you don't want to be too repetitive, right? I think I made Fall With Me, then I did Disintegration to try and switch things up a little bit. Then I went into Taciturn Tango, which to me felt a lot like Fall With Me. It's about like a relationship falling apart, more or less. So then I wanted to do something slightly different. Still, obviously, pretty melancholy, but with a tinge more of hope. I always try and do that with like all my projects, even though like some might be a little bit more bleak or melancholy than the other. I like to like switch things up a little bit and find like a certain balance to the formula or recipe, right? Like you can't just make depressing stuff all the time, because then you just feel like you're beating a dead horse creatively.
For sure. So how do you kind of a hard leftish, like, so how do you plan for your films? Like is it something where like you just have like your script, like, cool, I'm gonna go find all the people and put together, where like, and you try to wrap it up in like a month? Where do projects take like months or years? Like what does that all kind of look like?
I think all of it's just in pre-planning. So like it can go anywhere from like a week to like months of pre-planning, but that just all involves like writing, right? So like I'll do something where I'll just sit down. For example, going back to the sand and ocean metaphor, I might just like have a thought like that and I'll just write down that sentence. And then like, I don't know, I go for a run or something, I get my endorphins going. I have like all these ideas racing. And then I have a few more lines and I'll just like, oh, I'll write that down too. And so maybe after a month or two, I'll have like 10, 15 lines of like interesting ideas or concepts or just quotes, right? And then I try and figure out a way to like connect them together. I think about certain things that are going on in my life or like the lives of people around me, and try and take little chunks of that and try and like put them all together. So you would think of it as like you're putting together a puzzle, but you also have to like make that puzzle yourself and like cut up the pieces and then scramble them up and put them back together.
Okay.
So that's basically all like the planning process. And then like the pre-production's different too, because then once you have like a script good enough to share with people, you have to like get the team together and figure out how to actually make everything that you wrote down into something that's visually compelling, and also something that allows the director of photography, the sound people, the actors to have something to work with. And then you have to like find someone to like score the music and like really capture the mood and tone. And like it's like a lot of pieces that you need to gather together before you can actually put them together too.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this? How long have you been doing filmmaking?
Filmmaking, I would have to say late 2016, technically early 2017. Yeah.
For sure. And was your first film like, well, did you do any films before these ones? The Follow Me Disintegration? Like, is there anything before that? Or was this like, you just jumped right into it?
No, Fall With Me was my first one. That like, I just had a friend who shot some video, and I just wrote a script. And from doing a bunch of photography, I knew people who wanted to work with me on other aspects. So I just, sent out a quick Instagram story asking if anyone wanted to work with me on a film project, and that's where the ball got rolling. I think social media is just a very useful tool to like connect you with other people who are trying to create as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, so on that note of like creation, then what are your plans for future films? Do you have anything that's in the works at the moment? Do you have anything else you're waiting on? What else is on your kind of timeline?
Yeah, I've a script that I'm trying to wrap up. I just haven't figured out how to properly end it. It's always you get a good 70-80% of something written, and then it's the last 20% that's like really difficult to do, because you want to make sure it's like wrapped up nicely and like leaves people with a certain like idea or sensation.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's a hope.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever plan on like expanding past like doing short films, like trying to do something that's maybe like 30 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours? Like, do you ever, or like a series of stuff, or are you trying to keep it consistent in terms of short?
I'm writing animated series right now, but that's kind of difficult because everything comes down to basically financing, right? I can pull off short films in one day in terms of shooting and production, and most people will come together and just do it kind of for a trade for portfolio type deal, where everyone wants something to have for their portfolio, which is super nice. But I never want to do a project that takes more than a day to produce, or anything longer than a few minutes, because I want to make sure that the team I work with gets paid for the work they put into. So the hope is to eventually work on longer projects, but I think that's the other aspect of creativity that I need to be better at, which is the finance and producing part of it, where I actually find the right funding. I figure out how to maybe do a GoFundMe or something, and find a way to like properly pay people once we try and create, the hope is to create like a feature, or at least some kind of spec project to show us like, hey, this is what we're capable of doing. Help us finance it, so then we can turn it into something more of a full-blown feature or a series.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Do you have any inspirations? Like, do you have any like they're like directors or films you're like, oh, I love that. That's something I want to like. That's someone who makes you want to create, right? Or like a style. You're like, oh, I love this kind of style. Like, do you have any of that?
Yeah, it's I think I've been on other podcasts. I've talked a lot at length about Hon Hoang. I think another really big inspiration is Chun Wook Park. He's a South Korean director who does very nihilistic, disturbing, upsetting, depressing films.
Ouch,
But
yeah.
somehow he creates some kind of strange balance of like, no matter how strange or fantastical the world is that he creates, he still captures a certain sense of beauty in it through the music, through the colors, through the composition, through a lot of the cinematography. And I feel like that's something I aspire to do, where like no matter how dark something is in terms of content and story, you can still try and find the beauty in that. And I find that very analogous with how we should try and live our life, right? Because there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of terrible things happening in the world, but it's also you should still try and like figure out a way to portray the beauty in all of that chaos and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. For sure, man. That's cool. So when you're obviously like you're writing the script and stuff, when you're actually like on set, like how involved are you? Like, are you one like directing the director of photography? Like, I want the light to be like heavy red or heavy blue, or I want to do this, or I'm going to control the camera, where you more kind of sit back and let folks kind of like do everything else for you?
I think I've been very fortunate in the sense that I've worked with mostly the same people besides the actors in most of my projects. So at this point, I have like really good relationships with them. For example, Angel Para is usually my director of photography, and we've worked together on total of 5 projects right now. And for the most part, I get very descriptive in my scripts, in my shot list, and I give it to the team, and we have like little meetings beforehand. So by the time we get onto set, we start shooting, my involvement really varies, right? If I feel like if I did my job right, I gave my team everything they needed to get the shots they need with very little involvement from me. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes like they're doing such a great job, I feel like, do I even need to be here? I'm basically saying action and cut each time, and just basically saying like, oh, we might have to redo the shot here and there. But for the most part, like they're just self-sufficient. They're just so professional. It's like my involvement on the days of shooting seemed very minimal compared to like how much planning mm-hmm. goes into pre-production.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That's cool though. I mean, I feel like that means you have a good team though, right? 'Cause the fact that you worked with them before, you're being descriptive, you're giving them, you're like, cool guys, here's all the ingredients, go do it, right? And then you just kind of let them build a vision for you. So that makes a lot of sense. That's cool. For sure, man. Well, hey, I know we're nearing time. I want to ask you one last question, if I can. So you've done a lot, right? Like you built like films, like they look like films, right? Not just like short films. They look like, wow, that's a lot more better than I could do, right? Like that's clean. You produced 4 or 5 films already. You travel in the live photography. Like you really have the experience. For someone that might be wanting to like get started doing films or photography or just creative in general, what's a piece of advice you could give to someone that is just starting out?
I would say, work on the building blocks of what you might need to like try and do it yourself. What I mean by that is you don't want to be an ace at everything. If you're trying to be a director, I suppose you want to be kind of a jack of all trades. You want to know how to do everything, but you also want to meet people and like make friends with other creatives who might be better at what you do, right? So for example, I started with photography. I understand cinematography, but I wouldn't say I'm as good of a cinematographer as Angel, right? But I understand how to speak with him. I understand like how to break down a shot. So then he and I can communicate that. But him being more professional in terms of videography and cinematography than I am, he's able to pull these things off. I guess going to food as an example is like, I want to be a cook who knows how to cook different types of dishes, but I'm not the best cook at all these things. But I work in a kitchen with different cooks who specialize in different things. So I might know how to bake, but I will hire a baker who knows how to bake far better than I can. But I'm able to articulate what kind of cake I would like that baker to make for me. So using that into film is like, I want a shot in a particular way. I might not know how to get the lighting right. I might not know how to get the shot just right, but my cinematographer will know how to do that and articulate that with the gaffers and other people on the team. So that's my advice in terms of kind of getting started in film. Another aspect of it is just change the way how you consume media too, right? Like start watching movies that you want to make yourself. So for example, I really like Wong Kar-wai films. I really like Chan Wook Park films. I love David Fincher, David Lynch, etc. Right? Watch a lot of what movies inspire you and just start thinking about like what you like and start just stealing from them. Just to be frank, like steal from them at first, try and copy them, just like how an artist might learn to draw by copying their favorite portraits, pictures. They'll sketch it out over and over again. But eventually, once they gain that level of skill, they're able to innovate on what they were copying. And eventually, the goal is to kind of invent something that's uniquely your own, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, no, I would agree with that too, right? Like there's times where I'm like, even myself, I'm like, okay, I want to shoot like this photographer. So here's all the photos I like about them. Let's try and do those photos. We're not going to get it because I'm not good. But in trying to do that, I'll get something good out of it, right? And that's now run me a whole different route, and I love. So
yeah, it's a learning process. You take what you can from that experience, you learn, and then eventually you'll move to a place where, you know, those learning experiences help develop your own particular style.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool, man. I appreciate that. Dope, man. So, Hon, where can people follow you? Where can they learn more about your films? Where can they watch your films?
Yeah, for sure. You can just go to my website. It's HonHoang.com. And from there, you can get access to basically all my films, photo projects, social media handles.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool, man. Well, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.